All right. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Empire Interviews. Today, I'm going to be with Ian Kane, the head of partnerships at Midnight and previous CEO of Unbanked. So super excited to talk about that and get some insight about what he thinks we're going to be doing in the space and where this space is going long term. So without further ado, let's get into it. So how are we doing today, sir?
John, doing well today, man. Appreciate you having me on the show. So it was good to see you again.
Dude, I appreciate you joining us today. So for everybody out there who doesn't know who you are, can you give us a little intro of who you are and what you do in the space?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Ian Kane. I am currently the head of partnerships at Midnight. If you're not familiar with Midnight, it is a new layer one blockchain that is coming out of input output. I've been in the space for about 8 years. I was previously CEO and co-founder of a company called Unbanked. Some of you know it, some of you may not. For those that do not know it, Unbanked was basically banking as a service for Web3 companies. You could think about us as kind of like a Revolut or a Coinbase, but we took the approach of being a white label partner. And so if you had ever used, let's say, the Litecoin Foundation Visa card, that was actually powered by Unbanked. We had this big grand vision that we would effectively be the white label on and off ramp solution for everybody in the space. So if you were a Web3 company and you wanted a bank account and you wanted to give your users that bank account to convert from, let's say, cash to your token, we would enable that. Or if, let's say, you wanted to give your token functionality and allow people to spend that across the Visa or MasterCard rails, we made that possible. And it was, a really great run. I ran that business for about 6 years. I grew it to 20 million top line revenue. We were at the time an Inc. 500 fastest growing company. I got the chance to pitch Kevin O'Leary in a startup competition and won. Really, really great business. We had operations domestically here in the United States. We were operating in Europe. We were expanding to Latin America, had great partners, as I said, like the Litecoin Foundation and Nexo and StormX, which were using our technology. Unfortunately, we made the mistake of incorporating that business here in the United States, and we can get into that a bit later. But after that run, I took a little bit of time off and then migrated over to IOG. Prior to that, really just an enthusiast in the space, like many others was very kind of intrigued by blockchain and why this asset called Bitcoin kept going up in value. And then prior to like my Web3 journey, I spent almost a decade in the ad tech, martech industry. So a little bit about me.
That's fantastic. And I love all that. And that's kind of, I guess, like sort of unfortunate about the Unbanked side. You said, unfortunately, you're incorporated in the US, which like now would have been an opportune time to be incorporated in the US. But no, things have been definitely really tricky. The regulatory landscape for crypto has been up and down. There's been a lot of contradictions. And recently, I don't know if you've seen the newest ad campaign from Coinbase. It's amazing. So they have all of their Freedom of Information Act requests. And then they have the ones they received that are completely redacted everywhere. And then they got the same ones that they received that are not redacted from like the other court cases that they were able to fight. And then they explain about choke point 2.0 and everything, and how they were trying to stop on and off ramps for people in crypto. So
I can tell you that was so real. And I think at the time that a lot of companies were going through it, the Coinbases and Ripples of the world and Unbanks, a lot of people didn't believe that could be occurring. And I don't know if you happen to listen to an episode with Mark Andreessen on Joe Rogan, but they actually go into this in depth, and it's actually a phenomenal episode, and everything he's saying is spot on. What I can tell you is that when we launched Unbanked, and this goes back to 2017, 2018, strategically, we made this bet that we wanted to build onshore. We wanted to be a U.S. company, and because we thought we saw at the time that all these different organizations were actually moving offshore, right? And they were playing this game of almost like regulatory arbitrage, where they do a foundation in the Caymans, and then they'd set up in Mauritius or somewhere in Singapore, and they'd try to kind of play this game, and basically saying like, well, the U.S. can't touch us, and so we can do whatever we want. And what we kind of recognized even at that time was, look, playing this game and saying, hey, the U.S. can't touch us, that never ends well for anybody. And so we thought, hey, we're going to spend the time. We are going to, build out a very strong compliance program. We are going to incorporate here in the United States, and we're going to go through what we knew would be pain. But we felt that if we could demonstrate, we're operating the right way, we want to be a good actor, it would end up being almost a defensive moat for us. Because if we can make it through this gauntlet of regulatory pain, it's going to be that much harder for everybody else to do it. And, for a period of time, it ended up working very well. Like I said, we grew this business. We had a fantastic, growth rate. And, a lot of the companies who we ended up onboarding as partners, they had tried to do it themselves. And they were like, wow, like, this is really, really tough. And, the big vision for us was that, we're going to be headquartered in the United States. We're effectively going to piecemeal together banks all around the world. And we are going to be able to demonstrate that, hey, we've passed the gauntlet in the US and we've passed the gauntlet in Europe. And if we can do so, it makes it that much easier to enter every other country. And this way, when somebody like the Litecoin Foundation comes to us and they go, we'd like a Visa card program, we could say, great, what countries are important to you? Because what many people don't understand, if you don't operate in this space, is that you may say, hey, I've got a Visa card and I can use that Visa card everywhere in the world. What people don't understand is that in order to actually get that card, you need to pass KYC with a local financial institution. And so with that, we kind of thought, hey, we can set up the compliance and the onboarding process here in Europe and in the US, and we bring it all together. So this way, when the Litecoin Foundation says, hey, we'd like to operate in all these different countries, we'd say, great, we've got a one-stop shop solution. We can package this all together for you, and we can help you guys effectively get onboarded. And like I said, it worked for a really long time. As you kind of alluded to, it didn't end great, because what ended up happening was the Fed launched something called Operation Choke Point 2.0. They effectively went after all the banks. Anybody can go now on Twitter, and as I said, Coinbase is kind of promoting this stuff, where they basically asked the banks, don't support crypto companies. And so we had kind of primary bank partners that we worked with and redundancy bank partners. And what ended up happening here in the States is that our primary partner said, look, we like you guys, we just can't do it right now, we got to shut you down. I said, okay, no problem. Went to our redundancy partners. They said, hey, can't do it. I probably talked to 30 banks as we were spinning down, saying, hey, what can you do for us? How can you help us get onboarded? And what ended up happening was, the reps liked it, even like the C-suite liked it. When it got to the board level for approval of that bank, they were like, look, we can't touch us right now. So unfortunately, a lot of these discussions ended with, we like you guys, let's weather this storm, let's figure out how it goes. And the net of that is that we couldn't issue cards anymore or bank accounts in the United States. We had to effectively shut down, because it's very hard to offer banking as a service when you don't have a bank. And unfortunately, Europe and those other organizations, those other geographies weren't able to support us. So from a revenue standpoint. So yeah, it's unfortunate. It's kind of, end result is, what's the difference between being early and being wrong? And the answer is not much. And so it's nice to see that there's a new administration in. There seems to be a very big focus on how do we make US kind of a leader in digital assets. And I think if they can set a really good framework, a lot of other countries will adopt that. And I think long-term, it's going to be really, really great. And I think it's what everybody's been asking for, whether it's Coinbase or Ripple or everybody else. They want regulation, they want guidance. And so I'm personally very happy to see it's coming forth. I wish it would have happened a little bit earlier, but what can you do about that?
100%, 100%. And like thinking about just that and making the connection a little bit with Midnight, it would seem like Midnight will allow for KYCing of people as well. Isn't that true?
No. So, Midnight is a blockchain. It's a really unique piece of technology. It's honestly, after Unbanked, it's what got me so intrigued with joining the organization, is that they're really building the next generation of what a blockchain should be, which is selective disclosure, having that ability to have public transactions when you need it, but private transactions when you want it. And, people oftentimes hear privacy and they say, oh, that must be nefarious. And privacy isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it has to be done in a regulatory compliant way. And that's the most important thing. And so I use the analogy of, we we have a blockchain, but we're building a highway. And on that highway, we're paving the road and we're putting, lines as so you know where to drive. We're putting up guardrails and speed limit signs. But ultimately, we're not the ones that are telling you how fast you can drive. You're making that decision on your own. And when you get to things like KYC, it's very, very complex. So what will happen is we will develop our blockchain. That will be our core focus. We will have dApps or third-party partners that are using that, right? So maybe a lending and borrowing protocol, or maybe a TradFi institution that is issuing digital assets, right? And they, as the institution that is using our piece of technology, will have their own KYC or compliance program. And with that, you'll be able to attach DIDs. And so if you know anything about the fintech space, when you hear about KYC, there's multiple levels of this. And so, for example, I'm Ian, I might use my information and try to get a bank account at Bank of America, and they approve me. And I take that same information and I apply to get a bank account at Wells Fargo, and they deny me. And you go, hey, how's that possible? Well, the reality is that they have different kind of controls internally about, what they mark as high risk or low risk, or just there's all kinds of different variables. And it's kind of their secret sauce. And so that is not a space that we play in or get involved with. What we want to do is make sure that all the KYC partners that maybe work with those institutions do have the ability to have visibility into Midnight. And so that's what makes us so unique, is the ability to kind of have that selective disclosure mechanism, have the ability to protect certain transactions, the value of the transactions, but also any kind of metadata attached to those transactions. And that metadata can be things like KYC, if that all makes sense.
No, that did make sense. But I was just instantly thinking that the KYC that is offered on Midnight would, through these third parties, that could open up again, right? Basically what Unbanked was doing with all these different partners, with having that different kinds of selective privacy, as well as kind of having a more open.
Yeah, it's possible. With Unbanked, what we were doing was it's effectively called for benefit of, right? So when you offer a bank account, Unbanked, we were not offering bank accounts. What was happening is we were partnering with banks or credit unions, whoever it might be, and they're the ones that are effectively issuing these bank accounts. Now, what does that really mean? They're creating a ledger entry, and then they're holding that money, and that money ultimately exists at the Fed or whatever other overarching financial institution. And so we had that where we plugged into third-party KYC partners. And so at Unbanked, we use companies like LexisNexis or Alloy or whoever that might be. But ultimately, it was that bank partner who was deciding who they wanted to approve for a bank account. And so this is something that I actually ran into very often, where somebody would be a customer of Unbanked, like an end user of our cards or our bank accounts. And they'd go, Ian, I don't get it. Like I applied for a bank account and they denied me. But I already applied that same information. I've got a card with you. So how does that work? Well, in that instance, we might have had, this person getting a bank account from bank A, but the card from bank B. And so it was a great example as to how the same information, your address hasn't changed, your name hasn't changed or anything like that. You can be approved in one place and denied in another. And, what was the spirit of that denial? We never really knew, because ultimately that decision was made by the bank. But in the same vein, right, where if you think about Unbanked as a piece of technology that existed as kind of like a layer on top of the banks, Midnight could really be that same kind of foundational layer where people need access to a certain unique piece of technology, which is Midnight. Again, that selective disclosure capability, the fourth generation of what we believe a blockchain should be. On top of that, there will be dApps, lending and borrowing protocols, DEXs, whatever that may be, token issuance platforms. On top of that, those token issuance platforms maybe work with a TradFi institution, and then who ultimately gets the ability to issue those assets or buy those assets, that happens at that level. So it doesn't happen at the Midnight level, it happens at kind of a partnership level.
Gotcha. So then I guess one of the questions I have for you as well, because Midnight is really exciting to me because of the shielded and unshielded transactions, being able to determine what your privacy level is going to be, how much information that you're willing to share, how much information you want to keep private. What are you most excited about in the development of this space? Like, what are some of the projects that you are excited about that you think will have amazing impact? I really personally have been excited about Igon. I come from the medtech space, and I think Igon provides a pretty cool solution from that kind of standpoint. But there's a lot of cool stuff that's being built. What are some of the things that you're excited about?
Yeah, I'll speak. It's funny. I know, we've had a lot of discussions, right, about kind of, your interest in the medtech space and kind of what are the capabilities and, does Midnight kind of unlock certain capabilities? And I think it does. Let me speak more broadly about kind of, what excites me about Web3 in general. And I'd say, some of the hot things right now are obviously tokenization. Tokenization of any kind of assets, whether it's currencies, commodities, securities, or even kind of like non-liquid assets. I remember I was speaking with somebody not too long ago, and they were effectively trying to tokenize Bitcoin miners. And I thought that was very interesting, right? Where they're effectively treating these Bitcoin mining like trailers as an asset itself, right? And they would fractionalize that. And why would they do that? Well, because these miners are obviously have some value in terms of the compute that is occurring there, but then also they're effectively creating, cash flow in the form of, generation of Bitcoin. So I think that's very interesting. And I think we're going to continue to see a lot more of that tokenization aspect. And we just see through, companies like BlackRock and others that are kind of getting to the space. They understand that if you can tokenize an asset, whether it's liquid or illiquid, and move it onto Rails, which is the blockchain, and give it 24/7 availability and give it the ability to, be accessible globally and have deep liquidity, that's a very compelling opportunity. Now, at the end of the day, they're still regulated institutions, right? They're still TradFi institutions. And so while they want to move on chain, they might not like the ability to have, complete transparency over everything they're doing. They move $1 billion on chain. Maybe they don't want to announce that to everybody. Maybe they're not a big fan of Arkham Intelligence that's actually giving them insights as to what's happening there. So that's kind of a use case where, selective disclosure is very relevant to them because they want privacy on chain, but they still need the ability to expose to certain regulators, hey, this is what's going on here. The other thing, which, I think is apparent to everybody is, the apex of where AI meets crypto. And the reality, in my opinion, is that, crypto or digital assets are going to be the currency for any kind of AI agents. And so we're seeing this now, whether it's, AI as a piece of software or it's AI, connected with a Boston Dynamics robots, AI is kind of going to eat everything. I do think where, you're going to see, what do they call it now? That's like, I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, but it's DEFAI. So it's like DeFi or something like that. I do see it very interesting where AI agents will now effectively run on behalf of DAOs, right? Or if you want to interface and you want to do some kind of very complex transaction through, let's say, posting collateral to take out a loan, to then move it cross-chain to another bridge in order to facilitate something, it's going to be a lot easier to just type it out and tell an agent what you want to do versus connecting your wallet, figuring out which path has the best liquidity. There's multiple layers to this. And I think a lot of times, I've personally experienced this where I try to bridge from one asset, from one chain to another. I realized the liquidity pool I used wasn't deep enough. So now my transactions hung up, or I got a ton of slippage and I got killed on the transaction. That's the kind of thing that really holds back, I think, the adoption of blockchain, especially for, you try to explain that to a retail user, how to go cross-chain bridge, set up your RPC network, do all these things.
Yeah,
Oh,
when
by the way,
you try to explain slippage to
and so you
anybody,
lost 20% of your value because, you moved to the wrong chain and the liquidity pool wasn't deep enough. It's like, this is not the future of finance. Anyway, I think AI as a mechanism or like a UI UX layer on top of that is the future of where this stuff is going. And so tokenization's, I think, a big area for me. DeFi, where DeFi and AI, where that meets, that's a big area for me. But this space moves so quick, man. We talk about other things like DeSci and DePIN and all these other things. It's just a very exciting area.
absolutely, very exciting indeed. I think that like things like World Mobile, right? Those are awesome projects where you're able to purchase a node and then generate income from providing internet and connectivity to everybody around you.
Mhm.
That's amazing because it lets all participants be a part of their own ecosystem outside of the regular ecosystem. Right?
I actually, the other day, I just came across a really cool project that was, think about like Google Maps or Google Earth, right? Where if you want to go get a 3D view of what's happening somewhere, you kind of pull up the application. And at some point a couple months ago, they fired a satellite down and they figured out, okay, here's what the Earth looks like at that time. Where they drove a car through different roads, right? And they kind of mapped it 3D. This company was doing DePIN, where effectively you would download a mobile app and you would be able to attach that mobile app to a drone. And so similar to the way like Hive Mapper works, where you basically drive around your car, you've got a little camera and you map out the roads through all these kind of hexagonal patterns. This company was using drones to map that. So like, let's say I'm Ian, I'm a real estate developer, and I want to go to Asheville, North Carolina, because they recently had a lot of hurricane damage. And I want to figure out if, one of the pieces of property that I bought where I was going to develop something, how much damage has occurred, right? Because I can't physically get there. What I could do is use this new DePIN company in order to talk to people in the area and say, hey, if you have drones, I want you to fire up these drones. I want you to fly around the area. I want you to map it to me. And then in nearly real time, probably a couple hours delayed, I can actually figure out what that piece of real estate looks like. And I thought that was a really cool use case because you got a lot of people that have hobby drones. It's pretty easy to attach a phone to that. And if you can make a little bit of, called rewards or revenue, however you want to figure it out, in the form of tokens that can be rewarded to you for anybody saying at any time, hey, I'd like to map this area of real estate or geography, seems like a really cool use case. So those are the kinds of things that get me really, really excited. Another one, sorry, not to bore you with all these things that I think are
No,
cool.
you're good. I love it. I mean, I get excited about all this stuff.
There's a company called WeatherXM. I have no affiliation with it. I'm not showing it. I just came across it. Basically, what they're doing is they're mapping weather data. And you're like, man, that's kind of boring, but actually not really. So what you do is you get basically like a weather vane, you pop it down in your yard, and you capture weather data, right? And why is that interesting? Why would anybody pay for that? Well, the reality is, like with insurance companies, right now, when they kind of get weather, they get these big, gigantic stations at different places, but they're 100 miles apart. And so that's why sometimes you check the weather and you go, hey, it's not going to rain today. You go out to the store and you get the rain down. You're like, what the hell? The weather's always wrong. This is hyper local weather. So what you're doing is, again, these hexagonal patterns. You set up all these different, weather mining stations, and you're able to capture all this data in all these different geographies. And then what happens is that data can then be sold back to anybody who wants it. So an insurance company might say, hey, we've got a claim for all this hail damage that happened here. And they're saying it hailed in this area, and like our data is not very accurate. Can we get hyper specific data from this company, WeatherXM, and figure out if this hail damage really did occur and these people have a claim for hail damage, or maybe they got a softball and they were just throwing it up on the roof, right? And they were kind of damaging the roof. So it's these kinds of use cases that I think are really, really cool. Are they home runs? Are they going to become multi-billion-dollar businesses? I don't know. But I think the way people are thinking about it in this space is very exciting, because they're effectively taking old models, flipping them on their head, and seeing, how do we decentralize this and how do we incentivize a lot of different participants to come and participate in this? So anyway.
100%. And you were talking about all that AI stuff, and I just mentioned to you just before this, Axon DAO has A+ voice, where you can speak into a microphone and it takes the recording and then gives you some insights on your health, which is crazy.
Yeah. It's like how that stuff works, I don't know. But I think, again, like being able to say, okay, I talked to ChatGPT, and it's like, hey, the way Ian's talking to me, maybe he's going to have Alzheimer's. I don't know. It would be interesting to kind of understand that, use it as one signal to say, okay, what is the confidence level that ChatGPT has? Is how are they coming about kind of deciding whether, the way Ian speaks actually, has a higher propensity for some kind of disease? And then can I take that data and actually go see like a real doctor, right? Because ChatGPT is not a doctor. But like, can I go see somebody and say, hey, I've got this insight. Is this true? Is this pseudoscience? I think we've heard similar stories too with like people that wear an Apple Watch, right? And like they're wearing an Apple Watch and they're sitting there and then boom, their heart rate goes up. They can't figure it out. And then like it's, happened maybe once or twice, and they go see their doctor, and that Apple Watch has detected maybe some kind of blockage in an artery or something like that. And so I think of these things as this is not the holy grail, at least today. But like these are signals that you can take to actually go and speak to somebody who's a professional and say, hey, I have this insight. Is there a problem here? Do you need to run deeper tests?
Absolutely. Okay. So we've touched on Unbanked. We've talked about things that are exciting in the crypto space, because I think that there's a lot. You mentioned that before crypto that you were in like the ad space.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've talked about the things that are exciting, innovative, AI and different things. I think AI is going to absolutely completely blow open. Just the future is going to be crazy, which recently I watched a very interesting interview with, it was a army military guy and Elon Musk. I think he posted it on his Twitter, and he was talking about how alignment is one of the most important things. And then he was basically like, alignment is the tough thing to get right, but if you have a Neuralink, then we can make sure that we can communicate that alignment perfectly without any communication barriers or misinterpretation. And that kind of changed my perspective on sort of that direction, because it's like it makes sense, right? You don't have to worry about being interpreted correctly if you interpret it exactly.
Right? Yeah. It's I don't claim to be any kind of expert on AI or Neuralink or what the future holds. I do think that, the reality is with any kind of new technology, people will have to adopt it in order to move forward. I could say, you look at like, Google Suite, right? The workspace, they now have automatic AI note generation that comes directly in there. Why? Because you just kind of need it, right? You want to ensure you can go back, you can reference, you can understand what happened in a meeting, even if you're not there. You can get notes. You don't have to rely on some human taking notes and hoping they're accurate. You can literally transcribe in real time what everybody spoke about. The AI spits it out. Boom. The companies that are using that are going to be that much stronger. With Neuralink, it's like they're running tests now. Okay, does that mean like in 5 years, in order to get the best job, you need to have a chip implant in your head because you're just not going to be competitive? I don't know. That's a scary idea.
Super
I don't
scary.
know. At some point, it's like, yeah. How do we? What's that movie with Johnny? Is it Johnny Depp?
Is it Gattaca that you're thinking of? Because that was the
No,
one
no. It's I think it's called Transcendence,
okay.
where like he gets, he's in the movies like a scientist, he gets sick and he ends up passing away. But what happens is he's working on AI. And so what they do is they take his like consciousness and they upload it. And then, he ends up becoming this like all knowing, all powerful conscious that can like tap into like financial markets and data and all this stuff. I think I think the movie's probably like 10 years old at this point. But it's very, very interesting. And you kind of, at the time when the movie came out, you're like, that's science fiction. That can never happen. And now you're kind of looking at where we are 10 years later. And you're like, wow, that's kind of scary. And so you think about, what you and I are talking about right now, 10 years from now, are we going to be looking back like, no way that stuff could happen. And it could just be normal everyday life.
100%. So Gattaca is an older one. I don't know if you've seen that one, but
Maybe not. Give me, what was the premise of it?
The premise was like, so designer babies, genetically designer babies become like the thing. And then so you have to, the rich people can have these genetically perfect people, and then they get all these great jobs, they live these great lives, and then all the serving class is just normal people that have their own genetic issues, right? And then so this guy basically pretends to be perfect because he wants to become an astronaut. And then so he pretends to be perfect, and he eventually makes it to space. But it's a really good movie because it's like, that is sort of the future that I think that you were kind of describing there, that I could see us getting into, where there's like the haves and the have-nots divided by a technological divide, right?
Yeah.
But speaking on this topic, because this is a question that I always like to ask related to movies, is when you're like scrolling through movies, what is it that you look for that draws you in, that then makes you decide that you're going to pick that thing? It's like sometimes it's a genre, or like there's certain things that people look for in those movies.
Man, that's such a good question. And I'm probably not going to give a good answer because I wasn't prepared going into this. But it's funny. So
There's
I
no
watch a
right.
lot of movies. I really do. It's just something I like to go to the movies when I can't, watch just, whatever's on Amazon or Netflix. I'm also a real big trailers guy. So like before I fully commit, I want to watch a lot of trailers and figure out what's good. I don't know. I think I'm kind of big on the production quality. So like if like there's, in my opinion, there's no shortage of just garbage on like Amazon or Netflix where like you're watching this and you got to turn it off. Like this is just not good. Whereas for me, like even if a story's not great, if it's shot well, there's really good cinematography. It's like an okay story, but like you can tell, in my opinion, the production quality of a movie versus something that was just kind of thrown together. Maybe it was shot on an iPhone. Some guy got access to Amazon, uploaded a movie, and you're like, Jesus, like what am I watching? In terms of categories, I kind of watch everything, man. I like scary movies. I like action movies, thrillers. I'll be honest, man. What it really comes down to is it something that I can watch and my wife can watch as well. Because if she's unhappy, she's like, we can't watch this. But yeah, I'm a big movie guy.
I
What
would.
about you? What's your answer on that? I'm curious.
So yeah, my answer. I have been really into like South Korean shows
Okay.
lately, just because like you watch American shows, you start watching it, it's like, oh, okay, I know what's gonna happen. You watch a South Korean show, you think it's gonna go right, and then it goes completely left.
Mhm.
And then so that's like exciting to me, the fact that it's not as predictable in the same kind of way. Um, but I typically look for things that are like mysterious. I like science fiction, and then like things that are dark are interesting to me because a lot of the times, like you don't think that humans can like get to certain places. And I think that they can, right? Humans can do anything. We're capable of everything, which is both a blessing and a curse. So that's
Mhm.
exciting to me. But I was actually going to recommend there's a show called Trauma Code.
Okay.
And I can't remember the second part, but it's something about heroes. But Trauma Code was one of the best shows that I've watched in a while, and you would enjoy it with your wife.
Okay.
It's kind of like it has all the things you want. Imagine like watching House, right?
Mhm.
The Doctor
Yeah.
House, but like action, like really like action, like superhero type stuff, but in the same kind
Interesting.
of a setting. But Trauma Code, very good. South Korean, another one of those, but highly
Have you
recommend.
have you seen? Oh man, I don't know if it's Korean. It's called Train to Busan.
Absolutely, one of the
Okay.
best zombie movies. Period.
And then there's a second one that came out that I watched like maybe a month ago. I don't know. I think it's called like Train to Busan 2, but there's no train involved. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a zombie movie, and like the quality and the production, it's like, man, like I'm just gonna assume it's Korean. Like they do zombie movies right, man. That's
Yeah.
really it. And then there's another one I'm actually looking forward to. So there's 28 days later, there's 28
Yep.
months later,
Those are
and
good.
now 28 years later is coming out. And I don't
Love
know
it.
when it's coming out, but I'm intrigued to watch that one as well.
There's another one. It's called All of My Friends Are Dead. I think it's called.
Okay.
But so that was a zombie movie. And then so like you're watching it's these kids in a high school and like the zombie breakouts going out. And then so you're watching the whole thing and you're like, they're gonna live because I like this character, right? But no, it's
Yeah,
not the
yeah,
case.
yeah.
Like no, none of the people that you get attached to live. So it's just exciting. But
That's pretty
I definitely love that stuff. And then the other question that I always like to ask people, because like I'm a foodie, I like to eat. That's like I live to eat. Some people just like eat to survive. I literally survive so that I can eat.
okay.
Um, if you could go anywhere for dinner and you can eat anything, you can go to multiple places for different parts of your meal. Like, what are you eating? And like paint a picture with your words of what you're getting.
I can go two ways with this. I'm pretty simple, not too fancy. I wouldn't put myself in the foodie category. One, I'd be, a big fan of sushi, right? And then maybe that's an easy answer, but like big fan of anything like that, especially if it's kind of like multi-layered, not just like, spicy salmon roll, but something that's a little bit more done. Um, then the other part of me is like, man, $2 slice on the corner of New York City. That's it. You don't sit down. Like, there's no seats, there's no bathrooms. Here's a plate. Give me $5. Here's your pizza. Get out. And sometimes those are the best meals. I know that's not the answer you're looking for, man,
No,
but
no, no. That's a
I'm a
great
simple guy.
answer. Specifically because I've been in Central and South America. Every single time anybody's like, "Hey, we should go to this pizza place," I'm like, "You
Mhm.
guys have no idea. Don't even talk to me about pizza." Like you're not going to get a good pizza in Honduras. You're not going to get a good pizza in Colombia. It doesn't matter what they tell you; they're wrong. They just
Yeah,
don't know. Uh, they just don't know.
John,
But
I got a question for you, man. You've been running this show for a bit, right?
yep.
And I don't want to put you on the spot,
No, you're
but
good.
who's the most interesting guest that you've had on?
Ooh, most interesting guest that I've had on. Um, I will say that I really enjoyed Mauricio.
And you're just saying
From
that because he works at midnight. Look,
no, no, no.
I'll tell Mauricio that you said that, and
Well, and we have the same birthday.
okay, okay,
Right? No, but
yeah,
I didn't find that out until later. I was celebrating my birthday, and then he put the post about his birthday, and I was like, "Man, we had the same birthday." But
yeah,
I really enjoyed that, and then, honestly, I have to say that the Axon DAO guys, that I just recently interviewed, I think that they were a blast, because one of them is literally like, physicist,
okay,
and then the other one, um I mean, they both recently got, well, relatively recently, they got an award from NVIDIA
hmm
for their A plus voice thing, and I thought that was pretty crazy. And then I also really enjoyed talking to Nav. Nav is funny because over at Igon, because he like is very, very, very calm, but he's talking these crazy things, right? So he's like, you
yeah,
know, uh, $500 million revenue, billion-dollar market, all this stuff. And he's like, well, data, it works different in Europe and the US. And he's saying all these things, but he's just so, it's almost like he's been through war, right? He's been through the battle already, and he's just completely unfazed. So some of these things that he was saying were like really amazing, but like he's just like monotone, like he's delivering them as though that they're not a surprise anymore, right?
Just nonchalant, huh? It sounds like he's got like the 1,000-yard stare, and he's just, I don't want to say PTSD for being in the space, but it sounds like he's very methodical in the way.
Yeah, it's kind of like there's that meme where it's like like somebody that first got into crypto and they're like stressed out, and then it's like once they've been through like a couple cycles, it's just like they're just like have that 1,000-yard stare. They're just like, oh, we're just getting started.
It's funny, man. What's that? Oh man, I forget the actor's name. James Franco, right? Where it's like a 1800s movie. He's got like the noose around his neck, and he's like looking over the guy. And he's like, "Oh, first time." And exactly. So that's it, man. You go like like 2 days ago, or not 2 days ago, maybe like this past week, right? Like Ethereum had like a 25% drawdown, right? And it's just like, and that's even significant by crypto standards. And you got a lot of people who are new to ETH and are like, "Oh my God, this was supposed to be kind of one of the safer assets. What's going on?" But that's it, man. If you've been in the space for a long time, you know how to ride those waves. And I've found that the best strategy is always buy and hold. Right? If you got conviction in an asset, you see it's going to do well, the fundamentals are there. Buy and hold for the long period, and it usually works out. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Here's a question: do you think that this cycle is going to be the cycle for mass adoption?
How do you quantify mass adoption first?
Well, I guess that's fair. I think that how to quantify mass adoption is a really good question. My thought is that I believe that if Trump is honest about this sovereign wealth fund idea for the country, Michael Saylor said forever, the second that sovereign wealth funds purchase Bitcoin, then it's over. Right. And I think that if the US is the first one to do so, and then you have the rest of the world, which is obviously going to follow suit, I think that that's going to be when Bitcoin completely separates itself from the rest of the market. And then I think that the rest of the market will be taken seriously in a way that has never been before.
Yeah. So tend to agree. Is this like a super cycle? Man, I don't know. But what I do know is we got a great setup coming, right? Yeah. Okay, so like let's think about this, like mass adoption. Okay, we're post ETF approval. Now, mass adoption in the sense where maybe a lot of people can hold like a Bitcoin trust in their 401k, but not everybody can, right? Vanguard specifically is not allowing any Bitcoin trust. I don't even know if they allow MicroStrategy. So like we're not there yet, but like we're in a really good spot. Post ETF approval, we're post Bitcoin halving. That's, we all kind of understand the cycles here. I think you've got companies like MicroStrategy, which are doing things that are interesting in the sense that they're saying, look, here's what we're doing. We're putting our money where our mouth is. We believe that we're long Bitcoin, short the dollar. Not only are we just going to say, hey, this is what we're doing, they're actively going out there and they're educating other companies on how they should do it. And a couple other companies have done that. Now, I think Microsoft recently voted against having some Bitcoin on their treasury, but I think it's inevitable that whether it's Facebook or it's Microsoft or it's Amazon or pick your other companies out there, I think some people are going to adopt Bitcoin on their treasury just because it's hard not to, especially when you've got pretty respected companies out there like BlackRock that are saying, look, we've done the math. We like this. We think you should do it. Have anywhere from 2 to 5% of your portfolio in Bitcoin. The strategic Bitcoin reserve stuff, I think, is like, you never know what's real until it's real. But he's definitely talking a big game. And what that, I think, whether it's FOMO or it's something else, I think the fact that if you have a large country like the US that says, we're adopting this, we're doing it, I think every other company is going to start to look around and say, oh my God, for whatever, the past decade, we've been saying we're anti-Bitcoin or anti-whatever. The US is doing it. Something real is happening there. And that is going to kick off almost like a global arms race because there's no more Bitcoin being created. And so whether people are going to print money to do that, or whether I was in Argentina, that's like mining volcanic energy in order to create Bitcoin. Like there's going to be ways that people go about accruing it. What nobody can predict the future. So like, do I think Bitcoin's going to $1 million this cycle? Probably not. But like maybe, do I think it's realistic that Bitcoin goes from 100K from where it's been holding recently to maybe 300K? Sure. I recently posted something on my Twitter where it was kind of like this rainbow graph of like, 100K is kind of, it's still undervalued. You get to 700K, maybe there's a bubble. But I think with all this stuff, these graphs are only relevant based upon the information we have now. The administration could say something next week, which completely changes where we think this stuff is going. And, you look at even companies like Van Eck, and they've got major bull cases for Bitcoin, for Ethereum, for Solana. And so I think I can say confidently, this cycle is going to be much more notable than previous cycles, just because the setup and the attention this is getting is much different. Now, I think we could even be we could be 5 years from now in 2030, and Bitcoin could be at $1 million. And I think you would still have people that are like, that's a scam, it's going to crash, because they haven't taken the time to understand it. They haven't taken the time to, understand how money printing affects, fixed assets. And so there's always going to be people who are on the sidelines, but that doesn't mean that those same people who are on the sidelines might not have a 401k of different mutual funds, and that mutual fund might hold 1% in Bitcoin through, let's say, the Grayscale Trust. I don't think we've topped yet. I think there's, our best days are ahead of us. I'm personally unsure if this cycle extends well into 2026 or it stops in 2025. I'm leaning towards a longer cycle. But you know what? At the end of the day, man, I'm just here for the ride like you.
100%. I will say that one of the things that I'm most excited about is El Salvador made that massive Bitcoin gamble. I think it was like almost 4 years ago now. And they have over doubled their entire country's treasury of their value. And I think that when it first happened, everybody was like, oh, it's going to fail. This is an unstable country in Central America. They don't know what they're doing. So we're just going to watch them fail, right? We're going to sit back and watch them burn. And the fact that they didn't, and the fact that now you've got, Nayib Bukele on Twitter putting his P&L, on Twitter for all these other countries to look at. I think that this has been kind of like the trial by fire that all these other countries looked at now, kind of as that case study. So
they're effectively, what MicroStrategy is for corporations, they're doing it on a country level, right? And so, it's really interesting. I like the saying that everybody gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve. I've got some friends that were exceptionally early, right? And they're doing just fine, right? And I've got other friends that are like, nah, that's not safe, right? And so everybody gets the entry point, and everybody absorbs some level of risk. And the reality is that, you're going to buy some assets and they're going to go down, right? But if you hold conviction, you understand it, it's going to go up. So I think, man, this is just so interesting to watch it all unfold. And it's almost like we're living through history right now in terms of seeing how these countries adopt it, how sovereign wealth funds invest in it. I will say personally, I think of Bitcoin not as currency like a lot of people do. I think of it as kind of a digital asset, much like gold. But I think it's also a little bit different in the sense that, people like to have a point of reference. So whether it's, real estate, or it's gold, or it's art or something, Bitcoin's a little bit different in the sense that it's, highly fungible, but it's also exceptionally valuable, right? So much like, if I bought real estate in Manhattan in, the late 1800s, well, I know it's, it's going to be a great buy and hold, but it's not necessarily exceptionally fungible where Bitcoin is. So, man, it's going to be a great year to watch. I don't really have any further comments on it. It's just, it's an exciting time, and I'm obviously very long crypto as an asset and as an industry.
I appreciate your time today, Ian. So this was a great conversation. I'm probably going to get this out sometime over the weekend, but I appreciate your time, and thank you for joining me. Anytime when you have some big midnight announcements that you can give out here, let me know, and then I'll have you back. And if there are any projects that you're close with that you think I would enjoy speaking to, would love to have them on. But thank you so much, Ian. And I hope you have an excellent rest of your day.
John, man, just want to say real quick, I appreciate you having me on. Keep doing what you're doing with the show, man. I think it's great. I'd love to share midnight related news when I'm allowed to. But we've got some big things coming, and I'd say for anybody watching, please make sure you're following Midnight on Twitter. We do have some really, really special technology here. We've got some great stuff lined up. I wish I could tell you more. And John, as always, man, appreciate your time. I will definitely refer this episode out to some other projects, and hopefully we can get you a lot more great guests. And we can make you one of the top platforms where people come to get Web3 related content.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Cheers.